What is up, guys? Welcome back to CageChat MMA. We are here back for the UFC 264 live preview. Of course, we have got Dustin Poirier versus Conor McGregor. The trilogy, the final chapter is upon us tomorrow night, and we're going to do a little bit of the preview for the main event and, of course, the whole card. Of course, it's a stacked card, some huge names on it. Stephen Thompson versus Gilbert Burns. Sean O'Malley returns on the card. Of course, you've got Tied With Us, a fan's favourite on the card. So let's get into it. But first of all, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Of course, make sure to drop this video a like and comment your predictions down below. Who's going to get the win? Dustin Poirier or Conor McGregor? Who comes out with that 2-1 in the rivalry? And who goes on to face Charles Oliveira, of course, for the lightweight title? Now, of course, we run this back to UFC 237. The two squared off, of course, in Abu Dhabi on Fight Island, of course. And Dustin Poirier righted the wrongs of 2014 and defeated Conor McGregor in what was quite phenomenal fashion with those car kicks. Of course, he took over the fight. Obviously, Conor McGregor had some, points of his own that was very good. Some of the boxing was very good. But overall, Dustin Poirier took the fight over and in the second round got that TKO finish. And what a fantastic finish it was for him as well. Of course, back in 2014, Conor McGregor, the rising star at the time, knocked out Dustin Poirier in the first round in 90 seconds in very dominant fashion as well. So both of these two had their wins and phenomenal wins at that as well. But of course, between 2014 and that second chapter in 2021 in January this year, a lot has happened for both competitors. Obviously, Dustin Poirier, has stuck within MMA. He's become one of the fan favourites, become one of the best lightweights. Obviously, moved up after that fight because of the weight cut was a little bit too much for him. But since he's moved up to lightweight, he's been absolutely phenomenal. He's beat Max Holloway. He went up against Khabib, but unfortunately, didn't win the title on that occasion. But, there's nothing wrong in losing to Khabib. Khabib's one of the greatest fighters of all time, 29-0, now retired. Of course, he beat Eddie Alvarez in dominant fashion. He knocked out Justin Gaethje. He's just been on an absolute tear. And of course, last year gave us one of the fights of the year against Dan Hooker, of course, if you remember. And then he walked into 2021 and gave us that phenomenal fight against Conor McGregor. So he's been active. He's been remaining, hot within the scene of the MMA. Whereas Conor McGregor, he's been in and out, hasn't he? He obviously went on after that fight against Dustin Poirier, became the champ in that division, beating Aldo in 13 seconds. He then went on and looked at Nate Diaz, of course, who was a late replacement for who is supposed to be fighting Rafael dos Anjos, and we're getting to their little confrontation today. He lost to Nate Diaz, then beat him in the rematch, of course, then went on to fight Eddie Alvarez and became champ, the first ever two-weight champion to hold belts at the same time, of course. And then he ventured off into the world of boxing to fight Floyd Mayweather on his debut, his professional debut, went 10 rounds with arguably the greatest boxer of all time. And then, obviously, he made, 100 million from that 80 million at the minimum. He set himself up for life, and of course, that meant he didn't have to come back into the sport of MMA. He didn't have to come back into the world of MMA, where one, the paychecks would be a lot lower, but also, the risk and the risk of injury and getting hurt is a lot higher with the different disciplines, the different ways of losing. Of course, he came back at 229 against Khabib Nurmagomedov, didn't go in his way. That was arguably his worst performance. I think that is his worst performance in a cage that we've seen. I think the performance against Dustin Poirier was slightly better that first round. He put a bit more money in the bank in that performance as he did against Khabib Nurmagomedov. And obviously, since then, that's come out that he was partying a lot. He wasn't trained in the correct fashion for Khabib Nurmagomedov. So it's an interesting one. Obviously, he came back in 2020. Thought Donald Cerrone beat him in 40 seconds, and we all thought, the king is back for good. And obviously, he wanted to stay active that year, fight 3 times that year, or at least twice more that year after that fight against Cerrone. And obviously, COVID hit, and you saw him all summer, didn't you? Looking at Anderson Silva, looking at Diaz, looking here, there, and everywhere, try and get a fight. And it wasn't until we saw Dustin Poirier look after this charity event between the two, which then the UFC picked up on, and that's how we got to Abu Dhabi, of course. And this week, there's been a lot of talk about Conor McGregor saying that camp was primarily, 70-80% focused on boxing with the idea of fighting Pacquiao afterwards and using Dustin Poirier as a bit of a tune-up fight to get some, minutes and get some rounds in, albeit in an entirely different sport. It's kind of like, Roger Federer using table tennis to get ready for Wimbledon. It doesn't work in that way, and of course, he paid the price of that. And I think he's coming to this maybe a little bit embarrassed of that performance. The one against Nate Diaz, you can say it was a late fight. Replacement opponent being replaced in Nate Diaz. You can say, it was two divisions higher at 170 than he was originally thought at 145. And of course, he righted the wrongs of that, and he's going to be looking to do that again tomorrow night. And Dustin Poirier, he's going to come into this with a lot of confidence. You saw it at the press conference. He looked a lot more confident than he did 7 years ago up against the same opponent. And even probably he did, in January, he looked a little bit more calm, a little bit more composed, carrying the confidence of someone who's coming into this fight with a win on the back of his shoulders. So I don't know where Conor McGregor stands right now. And, predicting this fight for me has been, or making a prediction for this fight even, has been one of the strains of this week. I've been excited to watch this fight and see how it plays out. But predicting what actually happens has been an absolute nightmare. And I do think it goes within 3 rounds. I don't think we see the final belt. I think whoever does win, I think it's going to be touted as one of their best performances we've seen in the cage from either one of these competitors. It's just in my mind and in my heart who that competitor is going to be. I think Conor McGregor, as I mentioned in the earlier video with the press conference, he doesn't look as relaxed, as authentic as he made that comment about how his mindset is on the building sites where he started off this game, and of course you can take inspiration from that, but I don't think, especially with someone of his magnitude of what is accomplished, I think it's very difficult to repurpose yourself in that environment when you live in Orange County, when you're living in Dubai on a yacht. You can't just suddenly switch off into that position that you're in fight mode, that you're in warrior mode, that you're getting paychecks to pay the bills, etc. But John Kavanagh's just spoken to ESPN and said this camp has been all MMA, and Conor said that, of course, and he said he's been looking sharp. He's been fully focused on MMA, and that's when we do see the best McGregor. When he is focused on something, we see the best Conor. He was focused on that title. He was focused on Jose Aldo. He was focused on becoming a 2-weight champion for the first time, doing things nobody had ever done, and that is a scary Conor McGregor, and that's the question mark of where we're at with 264. Which Conor McGregor is going to show up, and I think we're going to see a better Conor McGregor. I just don't know if the better Conor McGregor beats Dustin Poirier at this moment in time. I think Dustin Poirier is on a train towards that lightweight title. Of course, many people thought he should have fought Oliveira or Chandler for that lightweight title at the start. At 262, of course, he opted out of that for this fight, and rightfully so. And if he wins tomorrow, his stardom doubles even more so since January, and he goes into that fight against Charles Oliveira, probably a favourite despite Charles Oliveira's dominant run up into this title position that he's found himself in, and rightfully so. He's been on a phenomenal run. But I think Dustin Poirier might just be the best of this 155-pound division. Obviously, there's nothing that's outstandingly good about Dustin Poirier. He's fantastic, in all aspects. It's not like with McGregor where you go, he's got this extremely phenomenal and raw power with that left hand. He's got this superstardom about him, some charisma about him. Dustin Poirier is just good in all aspects, and he's got the heart of the champion, and his boxing's fantastic, his wrestling's good, he's got the ability to finish a fight in a submission. He's just good everywhere, and I think that's what we've seen the growth of Dustin Poirier since that fight in 2014, whereas Conor McGregor, he had to make a lot of changes that fight against Diaz, but primarily his method of winning has been, pretty much the same from 2014 to now, and obviously there's been a lot of time where he's been inactive in that. It's just a real tough fight to predict, but to have a look at the Taylor tape, of course, while my Taylor tape's not saved as it should have done. Let's sort this out real quick. But of course, looking at the Taylor tape, both of them are 5'9", both of them coming in at 155. Conor McGregor does have that 2-inch reach advantage, but Poirier comes in on the leg reach advantage, and he might have to use that once again, as he did in January with the leg kicks, of course, that immobilized Conor and allowed Dustin to capitalize and get the finish in that second round. His record is phenomenal. Both of these fighters' records are phenomenal, and both deserve tremendous amount of respect. I think that's why tomorrow is one of those ones where you don't want to make the wrong prediction. You don't want to make the wrong call here, because both of them should and rightly be very well respected competitors in this game. And even if Conor McGregor loses, I don't want to see. We're going to see it because of the magnitude of the star he is. He's finished. He's this. He's that. He needs to retire, etc. Because I think there's a number of fights that are handy for Conor McGregor, and a way that Conor McGregor can still stay within MMA and become this sort of Floyd Mayweather sort of prodigy and product, in terms of he comes out once, maybe twice a year, maybe once every 2 years, and has this super mega fight. I think his stardom will carry over from that. But of course, if he gets finished, tomorrow, and maybe he fights Nate Diaz and gets finished in that fight as well, his star will, essentially begin to dim. The reason why Mayweather is able to come out and do so much is because he has got that O next to his name, which people are almost dying to see him lose. We don't have that with McGregor. Obviously, there's a lot of people tuning in to see him lose, probably as many as that tune in to see him win, you could say. But there isn't that undefeated streak that we saw. Maybe like Khabib. A lot of people will probably look, tune into Khabib to see, could this finally be the one where he loses? And obviously, that never happened. So I think more people are tuning in tomorrow to see what Conor McGregor turns up, rather than what Dustin Poirier turns up as well. What Conor are we getting? The press conference had some negatives, and it also had some positives. That he's present. He's obviously, seemingly looks sober for this camp. He looks, dialed in. It's just maybe skill wise and technique wise how that goes up against this Dustin Poirier. And of course, let's have a look at the rankings. Of course, obviously Justin Gaethje somewhere in the mix in this lightweight division. We found out, of course, as expected, Dustin Poirier or Conor, whoever wins tomorrow, will be given the title shot against Charles Oliveira. Obviously, Tony Ferguson lost to Beneil Dariush at 262. Conor McGregor, if he loses tomorrow, could have a great fight against Tony Ferguson. Of course, today at the weigh-ins with Rafael dos Anjos being the backup fighter for the main event tomorrow. Those two met in the Apex. Of course, they crossed paths and had a little bit of a back and forth. So the McGregor and Rafael dos Anjos fight is still there to be made, and still could be made. Of course, you've also got Nate Diaz, Jorge Masvidal, Nick Diaz potentially. I don't see Nick Diaz he might be cutting down to 170 for Robbie Lawler. Now, there's handy fights out there for McGregor that, one, make the company a lot of money, him a lot of money, and the fans are going to tune in and watch. So for Dustin Poirier, if he loses tomorrow, I'd like to see him fight Nate Diaz. I'd like to see him face Tony Ferguson, maybe rematch him against Gaethje. It seems to me that Gaethje's going to be fighting Chandler. Those two seem to be the only ones that aren't in the picture right now. Maybe do Dariush Gaethje. You can never know. Dariush probably deserves that bigger fight, or deserves the next a big fight as well after that win against Ferguson. So the lightweight division's in very good hands at the moment. We've got Islam Makhachev against Thiago Moises next week. I'm sure if Makhachev gets the win next week, you're going to be looking at him against an RDA, a Tony Ferguson, a Dariush perhaps even. So Conor McGregor, if he wins tomorrow, fantastic. It's going to be interesting to see, if he does win, what we see from McGregor over the next 12 months. He's already talking about fighting Charles Oliveira, and that's McGregor we'd like to see, who's plotting those next moves, who's plotting that path to the belt that we saw in the original Conor McGregor. That's the part that makes me excited, rather than the part that is almost a bit scripted, a bit cringy in the press conference. We're seeing him, tell us what he's going to do, and usually 9 times out of 10, what he tells us is what he goes and does. But he's in for one hell of a night tomorrow against Dustin Poirier, and I do want. My heart says McGregor within 3. My head says Dustin Poirier within 3. But yeah, it's one of those fights that we're going to be talking about for the next probably 2 years. I'd imagine, with how the narratives could play out for both fighters. Equally, in the co-main event, of course, we have got Stephen Wonderboy Thompson up against Gilbert Burns. Now, of course, Gilbert Burns comes from that loss at UFC 260. 258, of course, against Kamaru Usman. And, he got knocked down in that second round. He had very good success in that first round, of course. He rocked Kamaru Usman, but of course he got a little bit excited, a little bit too ahead of himself, and, he tired out, and, Kamaru Usman then caught him and, viciously put him away. So it's going to be interesting to see how Gilbert Burns comes back from that loss. Of course, he come back from losses prior to that, knockout losses prior to that as well. But it's going to be interesting to see, how that magnitude of that fight in the Apex, his first title shot, of course, against a former teammate, it's going to be interesting to see how he returns into an atmosphere one with fans, but of course, that first one after a big knockout can always be a bit more tentative. He went first a lot of the times in that first round against Usman. If he goes first in this bout, how's he going to react to Thompson, who's a fantastic counter striker, a fantastic point striker in that karate stance? So you could see maybe the same thing happen again, or you could see Burns maybe hold back 10% this time and maybe look to go second, which in that case could still work out good for Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, because of the fact that Thompson, he's so good with that in and out nature. He can take it 3 rounds and not take any damage, just like he did against Vicente Luque, Jeff Neal, etc. He's really still at the top of his game, even though he's 37, 38 years old. He's still at the top of this division, and many people want to see him get a title shot. Should he get the win tomorrow? A lot of people, well, at the moment, it's Colby Covington getting the rematch against Kamaru Usman later on in this year. But if Wonderboy gets a finish, or 30-27, 30-26 ballpark sort of decision win, he could very much put himself next in line for the title. Obviously, you've got Leon Edwards that still deserves a title bout, but after Nate Diaz performance, he dominated for 4.5 rounds and almost got knocked out. So I think while he deserves that title bout, I think there'll be more push for Thompson to get the title fight than Leon Edwards. Should Wonderboy get the win tomorrow. Of course, if Burns gets the win, he's coming off that loss to Usman, so it opens up between Covington and Leon Edwards, with Covington probably getting the rub of the green on this one after that win against Tyron Woodley. So it's a tough position to be in for Leon Edwards tomorrow night, win or lose the Wonderboy. To have a quick look at the course at the tail of the tape, we've got 19th throw against 16th throw on 1. 5'10", you got a 2-inch reach advantage, or height advantage even. The Wonderboy, and you got a 4-inch reach advantage there as well, from a 2-inch leg reach advantage as well. Let's not forget, Gilbert Burns was originally on 155 and not so long ago, so he's come up to 170. Looked great at 170, knocked out Damian Maia, beat Tyron Woodley by decision, of course. So he's put in some great work, and obviously he was meant to fight Usman in the middle of last year. Unfortunately, he caught COVID. That fight got rescheduled twice, and of course fought him at 258 in February. So it's his first one back. He did have a grappling bout in April against Rafael Lothato Jr., which he did win. So we know his jiu-jitsu is phenomenal. He's got top class jiu-jitsu, and should he get Wonderboy down, you might see him get a guillotine or a rear naked choker if he can get on the back of Stephen Thompson. But we see how good Wonderboy is in his previous fights. It's only that loss to Anthony Pettis where there's a definitive sort of loss on his record. Not many people thought he beat Darren Till. He put on a masterclass against Jorge Masvidal. He lost to Tyron Woodley in that majority decision before that draw at 205, of course. So, he's been on a fantastic run in this sport and in this division. That Anthony Pettis won, you could see Burns almost coming off of that sort of victory, that path of victory as well. Coming up against the cage maybe and landing one on Wonderboy, and getting that finish. You could see happening, but you could see with the previous work with Masvidal, Vicente Luque and Neal, you could also see Wonderboy going through the motions here and just putting on a perfect performance to get that decision win, or maybe find a finish of his own. But I do think if Wonderboy gets the win, I do think it does go 3 rounds personally, and we see the final buzzer for that fight. A fantastic co-main event for a fantastic card as well. Of course, that leads us on to Tai Tuivasa, of course, and Greg Hardy. Of course, this is almost yin and yang in terms of loved and hated fighters. Greg Hardy obviously coming on into the UFC with a lot of baggage and a lot of various reasons to be disliked. And Tai Tuivasa is someone who he's a fun guy. He does the shoeies after every performance he wins, and he had his own sort of bounce back himself in terms of being cut by the UFC and then instantly almost being brought back in. And obviously he's beat Stephen Struve and Harry Hunsucker since then. And tomorrow night is a fantastic performance from Greg Hardy. He carries some notoriety about him because of his past, and he's had some good wins. The loss to Alexander Volkov, he deserves a lot of respect for, because he did that on short notice in Moscow. Went to 5 rounds, of course. And I believe he broke his hand in the first round, if not the second. So he showed some heart in that fight. He's come to that loss to Marcin Tybura, where had a good first round, but he gassed out in the second round. Before that, he beat Maurice Green and Jorgen De Castro. So he's one of those who's still learning So she did the best she could. It was just those 3.5 pounds that she couldn't get off, and she's been fined 30% of the first fight. Does go ahead. Yana Kunitskaya put out on Twitter, of course. It's her second consecutive opponent to miss weight now. So she was rightfully annoyed, but I do think it's different within this sport, because obviously there's outside factors. It's not always fight. It's just not bothering to make weight. There's sometimes a reason. This is usually the reason for female athletes particularly to be missing weight. So it's one of those things that I do feel sorry for Aldana, but she's got to go in there and put the work in tomorrow night, because she's someone who was supposed to be the next in line to face Amanda Nunes. Now, of course, Nunes is going to be fighting next month against Juliana Pena. But if Aldana or Kunitskaya gets a win tonight, you could very much see them being the next competitor to face Nunes in that 135-pound division. You've got Aspen Ladd fighting soon. You've got Holly Holm and Durandamy at the top of that division still. They've had their shots and chances. Now, Miesha Tate returns on July 17th. If Miesha Tate gets a good performance in, of course, she's only 1 or 2 fights away from that title shot herself. So whoever wins tomorrow night between Aldana and Kunitskaya, I do think will be the next in line for the bantamweight title bout, and will get taking place. It's not really a featherweight contender right now, with all due respect to that division. So the next bout for Nunes is probably going to be a bantamweight bout anyway, in December, November, whenever that will be. Usually December she fights as well. So yeah, Kunitskaya and Aldana have a lot to fight for tomorrow, in my opinion. And as does Sean O'Malley. He's coming up against Chris Moutinho. Now, he was supposed to fight Louis Smolka, of course, but Smolka did have to drop out of the fight, withdraw from the bout, and that left a lot of questions about who Sean O'Malley was going to fight. There was Merab Dvalishvili, there was Ricky Simone. There was a lot of names from bantamweight, from the bantamweight division, who put their hands up, and of course we were a bit shocked when Chris Moutinho got put his hand up, but it seems like a couple of fighters who did put their hands up wasn't able to make the 135-pound weight limit because of the short notice of the fight. Someone wanted 130, I think, or 140, sorry, at a catchweight bout, and I don't think Sean O'Malley wanted that. He'd contract to fight at 135, so I think that's a little bit fair enough for him. He was willing to go up to 145 for a bout as well, if no one was willing to take it at 135. But of course, Chris Moutinho not missing up the opportunity to make his UFC debut. He's up at 9-4, and he's got nothing to lose tomorrow. If he comes in and takes Sean O'Malley to a decision, it's props to him. He's taken one of the brightest stars in that division to a decision on the debut. If he beats him, we don't know where he goes from there. We saw what Chito Vera got off beating Sean O'Malley. If Moutinho comes in and beats Sean O'Malley on his debut, he's going to be someone to look out for, and he's going to be almost immediately in that top 15, you could say. Obviously, Sean O'Malley's coming off that fantastic win against Sean O'Malley. Obviously, he lost to Marlon Vera prior to that, and of course, in 2020, he also beat Eddie Wineland with that phenomenal finish, and obviously Jose Alberto Quinones at UC 248. So he went 2-1 in 2020. He's come off into 2021 with a fantastic win also. So it's just what happens tomorrow night. But you're expecting Sean O'Malley to get the win here and put on a fantastic display and get another finish, of course, as well. So yeah, I do think Sean O'Malley gets the job done. I don't see there being much in the way of Sean O'Malley, but with all due respect to Chris Moutinho, but I do think it's going to be a standing night for the Sugar Show. And obviously, we have got the prelims, of course, a fantastic card, a fantastic prelims. I don't see how there's going to be a decision in this prelims. You've got Carlos Condit against Max Griffin. You've got, of course, Ilia Topuria up against Ryan Hall. This could be a fantastic fight. Ryan Hall having a number of fights being cancelled on him, or withdrawals due to injury, etc., where he's been unable to compete. You've got, of course, Dricus du Plessis against Trevin Giles, and you've got Nico Price up against Mikael Pereira. Now, Mikael Pereira is someone who I have a love-hate relationship with. I hate the showmanship, the dancing to the octagon, etc. But he put on a fantastic performance, a mature performance in his last outing as well. And Nico Price is just someone the fans love. Of course, he went to a draw with Donald Cerrone. That did get turned over to a no contest due to a positive marijuana test, Nico Price, and it's just turned out, he's dying this weekend, and yesterday it was, I believe, where marijuana is not going to be something that the Nevada State Athletic Commission will be give them positive tests on, give them retrospective bans, etc., which is about time. It's the right decision to do, and this fight is good. It could have fight of the night written on it if Nico Price and Rico Pereira bring their best performances. Both are, fantastic on the feet and on the ground. Both of them are, showmans in and have, ecstatic highlight reels. So that one could be one to watch for a potential fight of the night pick. And obviously in the early prelims, we've got Jennifer Maia versus Jessica Rai. A big fight, I would say, in that flyweight division. We've got Amerik Medov versus Brad Tavares, Zhalgas Magulov versus Jerome Rivera down at 125, and Alan Amadowski and Yao Zong, who open up the card at 185, of course. So it's a good card. The main card is beautifully put together. You've got superstars in Sean O'Malley and Conor McGregor. You've got three of the most liked fighters, four of the most liked fighters in Poirier, Gilbert Burns, Stephen Thompson, Tuivasa. You got some heavyweight action in the middle, of course, and that prelims is just absolutely phenomenal. With Carlos Condit coming back and looking to get a win, of course. So yes, I do think for prelim picks, I'm going to go with Superior, Nico Price, Carlos Condit. I think Max Griffin had a bit of a scare today, not any of his own fault, weighing in today, and the commissioner comes out with 171.5, which would have been half a pound over, which probably would have lost him 10% of his purse. But fortunately, he was aware enough to say, no, I'm definitely 170, and the commissioner came back and rightfully as 170.5. So a bit of a mishap from the commissioner there. I wasn't too pleased with it because there are careers on the line. If say Max Griffin was drawn out, didn't have his full whereabouts at the time, he could have just accepted that he's half a pound over. He didn't, and got to the right result. And right for certain, it's just Irene Aldana who missed weight. So it can be interesting to see how that performance plays out throughout tomorrow. Should we make a prediction for this main event? I think I have to, don't I? I'm going to go with a Dustin Poirier third round. Third round, I think Dustin Poirier gets a finish. Maybe by submission, but maybe more likely by TKO. But I equally see Conor McGregor getting a second round KO as well, and coming out and proving all the doubters wrong and saying, this is the best version we've ever seen. He loves having his back up against the wall and pulling out when it matters most. It's a real tough fight to predict. So yeah, let us know your predictions down in the comments down below. It's going to be a fantastic weekend of fights, and we're 25 hours away from it kicking off. We've got the ceremonial weigh-ins kicking off in a couple of minutes, maybe in the next half an hour, maybe. So yes, make sure to hit that subscribe button as well. Make sure to drop a comment, your predictions for the fights tomorrow, which fights you're looking forward to most. Dustin Poirier, Conor McGregor, who walks away the victor in the main event. Of course, go follow us on social media, on Twitter and Instagram at CageChat MMA. And of course, we will see you guys for the recap on Sunday night, of course, to see what happened and what unfolds tomorrow night at UFC 264.